Good morning! Welcome to the morning show.
Wow, that was just beautiful.
Yeah, really epic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everyone's really excited.
Yeah, that's how we like to start our Fridays.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, good morning.
Yeah, it's still a work day, everybody.
Yeah.
Put your pants on, one leg at a time.
Well, I only work over to Zoom, so I don't actually wear pants.
It's too much. I didn't need to know that.
Yeah. What are the point of pants, anyways?
I think it's to protect your knees.
From what?
I don't know. Maybe like dogs. As I say that, our cameraman just pulls his shorts up.
His knees were exposed. They were unsafe. Unsafe
knees.
indeed.
Well, you know how ladies love men's knees. They always talk about how they're just the most attractive body part on a person.
You know the only thing more attractive than men's knees?
What's that?
The bee's knees.
Oh, men's knees are bees' knees.
Oh,
wow.
Man. Dude, next level right there.
Yeah. Boy, it is a Friday morning.
Hey.
It's almost like we haven't had an entire week
Oh,
to plan out these openings.
oh man. I think based on nothing that they like it.
Yeah, they do. The people really love this commentary.
Cheers.
Cheers
Here's
to
to
us.
us.
Way to go, us. Hooray.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Mm.
Welcome to the morning show. Here's your close-up of writer for the day.
Hello.
And I'm Reed Garcia.
Reed.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's I don't know. When
that's
I'm
good.
default, I'm just going to this weird announcer voice because I don't know what else to do now. So
Well, who are you?
oh yeah, I'm Ryder. Richards. It sounds good. You should just talk like that all the time.
All of the time.
I mean, once again, it's like men's knees. That's
Please pass me the tomatoes.
yeah, ladies love it. That sounds like that's an old SNL skit or something where somebody that's a TV personality just won't ever turn it off.
Yes. Yeah. I bet it is. I'm sure that has been done before, like most things.
Yes,
you know?
almost everything's been done.
Yes.
And all we do is just rehash it.
And that's what we're good at.
Yeah.
And by we mean people.
People, not us.
Not
I
us.
mean, we're actually completely original.
We're unique, special flowers.
Yes, everyone else isn't though. It's so weird how that works. Yeah, that's one of the fun things about being unique, right? Everyone wants to be an individual and unique, and yet we all seem to be kind of programmed from the same system.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because, I would argue that in a lot of ways, people are more unique than they've ever been. Because, if you look at it like through the lens of civilization,
right.
Walk with me through history.
Oh, this is gonna be boring.
Yes. When everyone happens to grow up in the same tribe, largely exposed to the same things, not traveling or going elsewhere or being exposed to other people or whatever, like they're going to be programmed pretty similarly, I would say, right? Sure, those humans have their set of differences that they're born with, and nature versus nurture. Well, the nurture is not going to be quite as drastic if it's a group of 20 people living in the same spot forever, right? Yeah. Whereas now, you can live anywhere in the world, and you can move anywhere in the world. Oftentimes people, by the time they get to full adulthood, now they've maybe lived in different places, they've at least been exposed to people from different places via the internet.
Exposed to people.
I kind of like we were just now. All right, those knees looked like they needed protecting.
It's for you ladies, that's why I protect these things.
Take out the knee pad.
Whoa, slow down.
But yeah, today, we've used the analogy of loading different software on top of ourselves, right? Yeah. And so now it's like, okay, before it was just tribe software, 0.5.
Right, but what was fascinating about that is each tribe, of course, being isolated, could build their own
build
superstitions,
of software.
their own, everything was based around whatever was unique to them. And the interesting idea might be that we, about 10 years ago, there became a big term about flattening. Everything was becoming flat. And they're essentially saying that capitalism was flattening us, right? Because now you can go to Paris and there's still a McDonald's or whatever. And, it's just like you can find McDonald's everywhere. You can find shopping everywhere. So, interestingly, we have grown to where everyone has similar desires with similar tastes that are fulfilled in similar ways. And then we end up building the same types of shops that are almost identical. So that's the other fun thing, is to go to a different part of the nation just so that you can eat at the Chili's that looks exactly like the one back home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny though, because to use this tribe analogy, right? The difference now is the tribes have gotten bigger, and even more diverse within themselves, right?
Yeah.
But that's so the way I see it, like, okay, we all are small tribes, right? And then we started to have media, we started to have print, we started to have books, we started to have newspapers, and then that enabled people to grow tribes, to have larger tribes where they have their tenets or whatever, their beliefs that are kind of shared between them. And then, of course, it went into radio and TV, and now you have what would be called, for example, an American culture, right? And then you have, of course, underneath that, many, many different types, right? You have, if you want to look at the political lens, there's that type of culture. If you say, oh, there's a Southern culture. Oh, here, there's a Texan culture, right? And then even more specifically than that, there's a suburban culture. But the difference now is that, and the reason I say people are more unique than ever is because they're touching so many of these little subcultures. And so really it's not like, oh, who are you, writer? You're unique as an individual. It's, writer, how many different subcultures have you now tapped into? How many of these things have you partially accepted and are now partially part of you? And that mix for you is different than for, our pantsless guy than it is for me. And it's like, well, only writer is somebody who knows about farts, aliens, touching lots of wood, limp microphone stands. Like, this is your unique cross section.
Touching.
Yes, good. Yeah. What's that on your lip right there? Is that from wood touching? Oh. Oh, the dangers of shop building.
I know, man. Oh, having a shop is tough on the knees.
Oh man. So that's we are more unique than ever in some ways, I think.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that. I do like kind of throwing the framework of sort of systems and capitalism back on it. I also agree with you that we are in a state now where, because of things like podcasts, like the internet, all this kind of stuff, I get to consume so many different kinds of media. And that going from fiction books to nonfiction to biographies to, more interestingly, this morning on the way in, I was listening to a theory podcast on Marxism and the horrors of Marxism, materialist culture leading us to be monsters. This is kind of a Halloween themed critical theory
that kind
show.
Of monster, huh?
Yeah, and what's so fun about all of this is that those ideas would have never entered my mind unless somebody else had kind of triggered them first.
So I'll challenge you here a little bit. Pretend that you're talking to a fifth grader and tell them what the hell you mean by Marxism and this monsters of Marxism. Come on, it was 30 minutes after you woke up.
Yeah.
Surely you're firing on all cylinders.
Oh yeah, of course. Why not?
Yeah.
What I think the way to talk about Marxism is that because everything is based on materialism, it's all based on creating products for other people. So the idea would be that whenever there is this kind of creation, the worker has to produce a lot of value while somebody else takes that value. And it's not often the worker that gets to see the fruits of their own labor. And since you can't actually see or gain all the benefits from your own labor, you end up getting isolated from not only other people, but from yourself. And the split from yourself is what tends to create monsters.
Huh. Well, you're describing almost sounded like indentured servitude.
Yeah, weird how that works. Yeah. And it's also what's fun, kind of the criticism, I think, the large criticism of Marxism is that when you're in sort of a materialist, rationalist culture like that, when everything is about products, when everything is about the object that you're making and your labor is this time-bound thing or whatever else it is, well, then there's a kind of problem with discounting superstition, with discounting all the other facets of human experience that people have. So I think in that way, that's one of the big criticisms for it, is there's just not a lot of space left. because it feels so sort of rational and fixed, and it's about these objects and it's about creating certain things and it's about economics a lot of times, well, then there's just not much room left for a lot of other kinds of things that we actually do and think about.
Well, fortunately for you, ladies and gentlemen, right here we have Ryder Richards, who has plenty of empty space in his head, which
Fill
we've
it
talked
up.
about,
Yeah.
which we are working on and will never fix. But, you know,
No,
you got
but-
that blank space, baby.
Yeah. We'll just keep on filling it up with critical theory podcasts that I'll remember for all of 3 minutes and then drop back out.
I'm a little teapot. Pour
Me
him
out. Yes.
Well, let's talk real quick about what we talked about yesterday.
Sure.
So yesterday, we started talking a little bit about structure and planning and architecture, and we kind of stumbled our way into a giant analogy.
Yeah. So it was a pretty well structured analogy.
Hey, I like it.
And we just kept adding on to it. Yeah. Talked a lot about architecture as far as if you want to talk about planning out your life, things like that, and needing structure and routine within your life or something like this. There's a lot of ways to sort of make that analogy to a house, right? People talk about having a solid foundation. You talk about buttressing things, like you can actually
As you do.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about buttressing all the time.
I prefer a flying double buttress.
Oh, well, who doesn't?
Yes.
But, not everyone can afford a flying double buttress, Reed.
Which is actually an architectural term, in case you weren't aware.
Yeah, by the way, I was thinking about him last night as I was going to sleep, and it was all sparked by the show yesterday. In case y'all, we were talking a little bit about arches yesterday, and how if you have basically two pillars, and you can either put something over the top, like at 90 degrees, that would be the lintel over the posts, but the arch, because it actually shifts the way gravity works. Well, one of the things they did with cathedrals is they came up with Gothic arches, which actually come to a point at the top rather than a nice rounded curve. So the Gothic arches actually shifted gravity more dramatically, and so you could end up having thinner posts or pillars. Well, one of the things about that gravity is when you shift it and it goes out at an angle where that window would be, then the angles come apart like a triangle instead of going straight down. Well, one of the ways to counteract that outward force is to actually put more gravity on top of the pillar.
Interesting.
Because it creates like a mass, there's a density and a pressure there, so that the gravity, as it moves outwards, hits this other mass of gravity pushing down, and it redirects it back downwards.
You know, as they say, gravity begets gravity.
Yes, it's something like that. When I found that out, I guess I was like 19 or something. It completely blew my mind.
You know, when we're sitting here, one of the things I wanted to talk about was firsts. So we'll get to that in a second. But I know a lot of you at home, when you're thinking, man, what are some big firsts in my lives? You're probably like, yeah, I remember when I learned about buttresses. I can see it as clear as day. There was little Ryder. He was right there.
Yeah.
He was 19. He talked like this. He had really long hair.
I did.
And he was still figuring out his sexuality. That's where you say, I was.
Yeah, I was really interested in butts and buttresses.
Yes, and then I was like, oh, there's architecture that could happen to have the word butt in it.
Oh,
This is
my
great.
favorite.
Redistribution of force. And art. Man, what an
Yeah.
intersection of design
This is
and
such a
logic.
good time in my life. Boy, yeah, if I could ever go back to the insecurities of being 19, I would sure do it.
Who
Man.
wouldn't? Who wouldn't? And with that, let's roll our intro. Helpful for life. So here we are again. Welcome back to the morning show.
This is Ryder Richards, also on the morning show with...
Reed Garcia, also on the morning show with...
Oh, man, what's my name again?
that's rough. What's my name again? That's all I can think about over here was Gravity by John Mayer, by the way.
Well done.
I didn't think about it till now, but I don't know how I got to it, but I also thought about Gravity the movie. And now I'm thinking about Gravity by Sir Isaac Newton.
Oh,
Is there a
man,
common trend here?
So many things going on.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I actually made a playlist back in the mid 90s, and I had searched up music, and all of it had the word gravity in it. And so just a playlist of songs that
Were
were
they
based around the term gravity.
Do they really like weigh you down?
It was pretty heavy.
Did you try listening to it on the moon to see if it was different?
No, I didn't. But the density of this mixtape.
The density of this conversation,
time
man.
space.
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about first, ladies and gentlemen. When was the first time you were listening to a podcast and you just completely changed it? Have you ever done that?
You mean
You just
change the
turned it
podcast?
off? Or yeah.
Yeah. I did this the other day. I was listening to Ryan Holiday on Daily Stoic.
Okay.
Who I actually kind of appreciated. Let's say during the pandemic.
So real quick, let's give a brief definition of so Stoicism is a type of philosophy that it says like, oh, you should really try and be very I'll let you define it because I think I'm gonna mess it up.
No, I mean you're right. There is this kind of stereotype of what it is people somebody who is stoic is somebody who is kind of non-reactive to the world, so to speak, and it can seem that way, very strong, very principled, those kind of things. So the strength and the principles I think is great, but one of the tenets is that you can only control how you respond to things.
Yeah.
So
if I were to use a layman definition, which please punch holes in if it's wrong, is when you think of Stoicism, it's like very level-headed, very I don't know. I hesitate to say lack of feeling, but just controlled feelings, very even-keeled.
Yeah, and they can seem to be cold, or they can seem to have a lack of feeling because they're usually not overly expressive, right? You would think of like the captain of a ship is very stoic or something like this.
Okay, so the Daily Stoic is a podcast where a dude's talking about this type of thing.
Yeah, and he's written some books on it, several books on it at this point, and he has these daily meditations they go through. So these very short, brief, sort of 5 to 10 minute little podcast episode. A good way to start out your day thinking about something other than your own thoughts, right? Thinking about how you're going to live your life.
Or Marxism.
Yeah, Marxism. Yeah. Halloween. Yeah. Whatever. And so one of the fun things about that is getting some perspective on your life and figuring out how to deal with adverse circumstances because everyone encounters them. So I think that was great. But the other day I was listening to him talk to his publisher, and he was like, he kept asking his publisher things like, so was I just really easy to deal with? Like, how great am I is what it sounded like to me. Like, he just couldn't even let the guy talk for more than 5 minutes without just being like, so when you encountered me, what did you think? What did you think? And I was just like, dude, you sound like an egomaniac right now.
Yeah.
Stop it. And like, I know he might be, he might not be. I mean, what kind of person has a podcast read? You've got to be a bit of an egomaniac.
You got to be able to hear your own voice a little bit every now and then. But I just want to point out a couple of funny things. One, the podcast is about not feeling and being even keeled, but it got you feeling so strongly that you turned it off.
Yeah. I was like, I can only control my own response to this.
Click. Clever. I like it. But turning something off or stop not reading a book all the way through, that's actually something that I have done extremely little of. I've typically been a end-to-end consumer, and that's been something that I've had to think about a lot more now as I'm someone who's creating things for other people to consume, is recognizing like, hey, the way you consume stuff and obviously the way you see the world is different from all these other people who are going to be looking at it. And so there's things like which kind of makes me sad that this is a thing, but it's a reality based on the data. Like with a YouTube video, when people start watching, within 30 seconds, 50% of people are no longer watching.
Oh, yeah. No, the metrics on things like YouTube is crazy, just to look at how many people click and then they just click off.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the swiping or stories feature on Instagram or something like that. It's almost like we have a TikTok training. And we just click.
And the thing that gets me is that, like, it seems like so many people are okay with that. And I just, like, I don't think people realize, and I don't know either, right? But I just don't see the positive of moving to that short of an attention span. And I don't think that people realize how much it ripples into the rest of their lives. I was just talking with a friend the other day.
Still talking?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
Sorry.
I was just talking with a friend the other day. His name was not Ryder, because he's not my friend.
Yeah, right. You don't have it.
Yeah. And the friend was just like, man, I just can't stand still. He's just like, I got to be doing something, and I'm doing this and doing that, and I'm like, I do think some of that's based on how you are, but I also think some of that's based on how you live your life and how you're like, yeah, because you're always watching something or it's on in the background or you're swiping through this or you're texting or Snapchatting or you're doing all these other things. It's like, dude, I challenge you, just like go spend a week without your phone. Just see what it does. And, this brings up one of the things that we want to talk about a little bit later. The topic of using a null hypothesis, which is saying like, hey, if and we'll get into that in a second, but because I want to keep talking about first. But yeah, I was just like, prove me wrong. Like, go put your phone away, and if it's come back and you're exactly the same, great. Then you're same spot you were. But if you do this for a week and you try this drastic thing, and maybe you'll be completely different and in an improved way, then great, even better.
Yeah, no, I remember when I was in college talking to a friend of mine who was talking to his therapist about, he goes, I think I have a drinking problem. And I was like, we're in college, everyone does, but
yeah,
but he was talking to his therapist about it, which I thought, I was like, wow, you even got a therapist in college, like you got your stuff together.
And
right?
This is back in 1954. So
yeah, right. There were only 2 therapists. So, but he was kind of talking about this, and the therapist said, well, if you think you have a problem, then just stop for a while and see how that affects you. And it was just sort of mind blowing that it was like, if you think you have a problem, don't talk about thinking you do. Just decide not to do this thing for a while. And I think when you have a problem is when somebody says, maybe you should think about not doing that. And your whole being rebels against that.
Exactly. And, the point you were making was actually before maybe even somebody else says something to you, you kind of have that gut feeling, right? And I actually have had that type of thought myself. With various things, but I'll also say with alcohol, I binge drank plenty, especially through college and after that. And, the interesting thing about alcohol, for those who aren't aware, is like alcohol affects people differently, and different people have different responses. And there's been plenty of jokes and skits made over the years about it. But, there's like an angry drunk. There's the drunk who just kind of falls asleep, which is me. There's the drunk like me who I lose my memory extremely quickly. And it's just like goes from 0 to 100. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm feeling drunk. It's like all of a sudden everything's good. And the next second it's like, wait, where did the rest of the night go? And which in my mind is one of the worst kind of drunks, because it kind of sucks and it's hard to figure out where it is. Right. But yeah, so there have been times where it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to take a break, but I don't have a problem. I don't need to stop. Like, but then it's like, well, if I don't have a problem and I can stop whenever I want, then why am I struggling so much to just stop, right? And so then it's like, okay, just stop, and then prove to yourself, right? If nothing else, like, okay, I did it for a week, and now I'm going to go back to occasionally binge drinking and being okay with it or whatever.
Yeah, and this is just one of those, Jonathan Haidt, who's somebody that is really worth looking into. He writes a lot of books about sort of sociology and behavioral psychology and things like that, but one of the metaphors he uses is the elephant and the rider.
Rider. I know about this guy.
That guy. So Ryder is up on top of an elephant.
Okay, good.
And this is kind of the verbal side of our brain. There's another book out right now called The Master and His Emissary, which talks about the same kind of thing, that there's a verbal, rational part of your brain that thinks it's in control. And then we have this whole...
Kind of like marriage.
Yes. No, it's totally rational. It's fine. I'm in control. And then there's this sort of more unconscious side of you. And you can even split it into the right and left brain, right? As far as I understand, the left brain is the one that is super verbal, super rational, thinks it's in control, and is actually the reason we lie about things. And whenever people have their corpus callosum, or whatever, the center part of their brain split, when that gets severed, then their body reacts in 2 different ways. But only the rational side of your brain lies, really. And this is sort of fascinating, because the rational side of your brain is tiny, but it's trying to control this elephant, which is your subconscious, your unconscious. And so when we're starting to get into things like how you control your beliefs, if you say, put your phone down, or just put your phone away for a week, then our rational part of our brain will invent reasons why we can't do that. We need this because. So we rationalize out what our unconscious wants. Our unconscious is addicted to that phone. It wants that phone. And then the other part of us just makes up a whole bunch of lies and piles it on top of there, so that we can feel like we're in control, that we can feel rational.
Which we're good at that. And, there was a previous video, we referenced in one of our earlier live streams about the procrastination. It's not the procrastination monkey. It's the something else monkey. But if you type in procrastination monkey, it'll come up. But yeah, same kind of thing in using monkey and a couple of other things to explain similar types of things about how your brain, you think you're in control, but all the ways you're not.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's take a step back from the heady philosophical sociological discussions for today. It's Friday. Let's go a little lighter for a little bit.
Got it.
Let's talk about some first. So we talked about the first time you learned about flying buttresses, which was exciting, riveting.
Flying butts.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's talk about the first time you had a love interest, Ryder. Take me back. Take me back to your young or yesterday, whenever it was,
Yeah, no, there was a girl when I was, of course, I was raised in a, I don't
barn.
know. Yes, a fairly strict barn.
Explains a lot. Explains a lot.
Yeah, and yeah.
Your obsession with sheds.
Yes.
Poop. All of these things show up in this barn.
The barn doors being open. Yeah.
Did your barn have flying buttresses?
Sort of.
I'd like to see that.
Sort of flying buttresses coming off.
Is that your first band name? The sort of flying buttress.
A type of.
So you're growing up in a somewhat strict home. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, and so I'd kind of course, being sort of super religious, I fell in love with this this girl, or fell in, I don't know, crush.
Fell in crush, nice.
I fell in crush with this girl that lived in a different city, which means I could only see her every so often. So I did the thing that any young pining romantic does, which is to write copious love letters.
Wow.
Covered with scribbles and phrases and lyrics from songs and little drawings, and I'd decorate the entire envelope. And I could see my dad walking out to the mailbox with him, just like, grr, just shaking his head like, what kind of kid have I raised? This is not very manly, Ryder.
I was about to say, did he wonder if you were gay? I was wondering.
Well, at least it was to a girl, so I think you should be happy about that.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. Unless the girl's name was like Sean or like Kyle or something like that, where it's one of those ambiguous names, like, oh, it could go either way. You never know.
No, it wasn't. But anyway.
Well, that's cool. I mean, how were those letters received? And it's to use a comparison for me. I growing up in a different century than you. I was doing instant messenger and texting. And, actually, I do think there were one or two written letters, but most of my romantic lyricism was done via the keyboard or the T9 texting.
Oh, yes. And here's the point where I tell you what you're missing out on.
Yeah. But yes, honestly, I do think I do think a little bit about that. But yeah, it's funny because Danielle actually, she's been forever the diarist and the journalist, and she's always been, let me save all of these things. And so I
like the term diarist.
Yeah.
It's so close to diarist.
It's diarist. Yeah, that's good. And in case you're listening, Danielle, now know every time that diarist is said, Ryder's thinking about diarrheist. I like it.
I'm thinking about your IBS, Danielle.
Yes. You semi-solid waste. But speaking of semi-solid waste, I was producing these love letters of these romantic things that were in these messages to her, and she saved them digitally. And,
oh, wow.
And so now she has them all, and I'm sure they will be showing up in various ways through blog posts or inspiring characters or novels or whatever. But the interesting thing is, one, that she saved them, and two, that I did stop doing those types of romantic writings after the catch was made, if you will. I was pretty romantic, and we started out and we celebrated every month for just have an excuse to celebrate. And then it's like, now it's like, once a year, it's like, we had, whatever that anniversary thing, like,
that thing.
Should we do something for it? Did you have which I feel like is a very common, like, drop off for couples. Are you still ever the romantic? Do you still write pining love letters?
No, unfortunately, I think I gave that up somewhere in the middle of high school. Maybe in college, I kind of just weaned myself off of that, which is unfortunate. I think there's just parts of myself that I closed off, and I wish I still had those. And I wish I was still more open, more romantic, more expressive. and I'm just not. And so this is actually something I've been thinking about lately. So it's funny that you brought it up today because I think literally this morning I was journaling about that exact thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that we brought up Danielle, she'd love that because basically she's like, wow, the synchronicities.
Yes, yes. No, yeah, just thinking about expressiveness and emotions and what's necessary in maintaining a healthy relationship. And the way I was thinking about it, though, is what we were talking about yesterday as well, which is plans and structure. Sometimes you can get so absorbed in your planning that you forget to live in the present.
Yeah.
So, not to get too heavy, sorry, it's
No,
Friday, but
no, that's good. That is a very important thing to remember because that's one of the common traps to fall into, which is one of the things we like to do, right? We like to say, hey, here are these things that are good and can help you do live a better life, or, things like that. But here are all of the traps you can fall into. And oh, by the way, we know about these traps because we've fallen into most of them ourselves.
Yeah, and we're fighting against everything too. That I mean, and that's we're talking about the daily stoic and the idea that there might be ways of living that are better for you and how you can handle yourself and these other kinds of things. I think during the pandemic, the idea of resiliency and stoicism had a lot of appeal because there wasn't a lot of choice. Like once you sort of made up your mind that you were going to care about COVID and wear a mask and shelter in place, then you have to change your mindset. And so I think this can be difficult. And then now that, a lot of people are vaccinated and feeling more free, and especially in a place like Texas where there's I don't think you can even mandate masks unless you're maybe some kind of businesses can, but anyway, it's gotten kind of open and free, and now people are going back to this whole other side, which is not stoicism but like hyper expressiveness.
Yeah, alarmistness.
Yes,
almost.
I need to go out and party a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they were like really constipated emotionally, and now they're like diarists.
Yes,
diarrheists.
They are emotional diarists.
Just all the emotions exploding everywhere, all over town. Clean up on aisle 9,
and
please.
For a stoic like me, it's so stinky.
Yeah.
Oh, control yourself, people. Control yourself.
So, why do you think that you have become less expressive? Or, it sounds like you did maybe a few decades ago. You think it was a gradual type of thing, or was it like a sudden clamping down?
I think, not to get super personal, but I think it came from pain. I think it came from getting hurt repeatedly. The more open I felt like I was with people, then the more it opened myself up to vulnerabilities that would hurt me over time. And the idea was just to reduce that aspect of my life. And I don't think I was consciously doing it, of course. Right. I just think that I was trying to block certain things off. So around trusted people, I can open up, and otherwise I just put on a nice smile and a bland persona and just move through life.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're alone in that. I think that's honestly probably the average development of an adult human.
Yeah.
And I do think that's a little sad, and not just for you, but for society, right? And I encourage, and one of the things we're trying to do is to help encourage people to be more open, to be more themselves. And the beauty of it today is there's 7 billion whatever people in the world, and it's very easy to fall into the trap that, well, these people around me are pushing me down or don't want me to be me. Well, guess what? You can find your own tribe now, and there's plenty of people who are letting their freak flag fly or whatever. And the thing is you don't have to be a freak, or you don't have to be a weird thing, but it's easy to forget all these things that the shoulds, if you will, or like guys like this, or girls do this, or even if it has nothing to do with gender, right? It's just like you should or shouldn't do this. Like those are all things that we've created, we've piled on as society, and there really is no right or wrong. It's just that's how it is right now, and you can go find that different subculture. That's what makes people unique, right? And maybe you've done that a little bit. Do you think that you now those people you can be safe around has extended a little bit to some of these other communities you've gotten plugged into versus just maybe the individuals that you are close with?
Well, you know what's even using that idea of being safe around certain people. Yeah, I think that has extended, but I think that extends because something about being less worried about getting yourself hurt. Part of that comes into finding some sort of stronger core for who you are, and not taking other people's criticism so personally. And then, interestingly enough, your tribe can expand on its own.
Yeah.
So I think this walling off mechanism of looking for safety, if you're actually looking for safety, you will never probably look towards other people for that. You'll be forced into trusting other people, and then that makes you resentful of that trust. So I think that there's something about eventually sort of coming to this idea that there's a core of who you are that no one else can take and it can't be hurt. That kind of resiliency, I think, then allows you to open up more and spread and open up your tribe. So, whatever that tribe is or is not, but I think working on it is for me, it's part of like a daily life practice that I need to actually work on expanding that.
Yeah. So let's tie that into the metaphor we talked about yesterday, which we kind of started to recap earlier on, but I don't think we completely got to. So we talked about yesterday how, you could think about life like building a house or any sort of building, right? And we talked about how first step is making the foundation, which you would think would just be pouring concrete, but no, that's actually taking things away, removing the dirt that you're resting things on, because guess what? It may not be the best dirt to put things on top of. And one of those things may be people in your life that are opposite to the way that you want to live. They're not accepting of the things that you want to do. And it's very important to point out that these don't have to be extreme things like, oh, I want to do this thing sexually, or I want to do this thing politically, or whatever. It doesn't have to be supercharged like that. It could just be like, I like to go outside, every day, and this person wants me to always be inside. Like it could be, normal, regular things like that, right?
Yeah, and I would actually say that that's a much better idea than finding somebody who's equally politically charged, or
right,
equally sexually charged, or equally whatever, right? Ambitiously driven, right? Because there's some sayings that float around on the podcast circuit. It's like you're the culmination of the top 5 people you hang out with the most.
Right.
And so if you find people that are all into one thing, then that just sort of triggers your own one thing, and you sort of start becoming unidimensional.
Right. I talked about how you could be more unique than ever, and you talked about how being exposed to more circles, but and more layers of software, if you will. But you can actually fall into, I would call it a little bit of a trap, but maybe that's wrong. But where you fall so much into one circle that you become so identified with that you can't see the reality or the possibility of any of these other circles, right? It's like, oh, well, this is how it is. How can you believe it any other way? Which that's kind of the attitude you see so much these days, which I think the more circles you're at least exposed to, and the more you sit there and you're like, okay, well, I really care about Steve, and Steve feels pretty strongly about this one thing. Maybe I should sit down and come from a place of understanding and curiosity and be like, Steve, tell me, like, why is it that you think that thing? Or writer, why is it that you spent all of that time writing in those big long letters and drawing those things on the outside? Like, instead of me being like, why did you do those things? And that's wrong and whatever. Like, hey, maybe there's something I could learn about expressing myself that way, and maybe I'm not going to jump to doing the letters and drawing all those pearly things.
Reed,
but
you want to.
But maybe I'll write like a sticky note that says "love you," something.
Yeah. Well, you got to work your way up to it. I mean, not everyone's just a romantic doodler like I am.
Yes.
But,
well, you needed to have the word duty within that.
Speaking of like, opening up our circle a little bit.
Oh, look, and we've got some people in the chat, which is great. So Danielle was referencing the fact that when I was talking about procrastination and monkeys, it's the instant gratification monkey. That is the thing that we were talking about. And then she is also requesting she wants to have some doodles. She wants the doodles in her love letters. So I will pledge to do that just for you today, which let's just go ahead and make that our challenge.
That's
for
the challenge for today.
If you have anybody in your life or just yourself, I want to challenge you to write a love letter to either yourself or somebody else. And I want to point out, and let's talk about this in a second, what does the word love mean and the different types of love that we're not going to spend a whole hour on, but we can touch on that, including your friends or your siblings or your family or a freaking coworker or a boss or anyone in your life. Like, just write something down for them. And you could call it a thank you note. You could call it a, hey, I was thinking about you. And make sure to include at least one doodle, because there's one thing that is a very big myth, which is I can't draw.
Yeah, as a former art professor, I've had so many people say I can't even draw a stick figure, right? It's like we lean on these cliches without really even testing ourselves. But I can also tell you, as an art professor, I've taught people who couldn't draw a stick figure, and they're easier to teach to draw than people who think they're artists.
Because they don't have all those things layered on, you think?
Baggage and negative habits, and honestly, it is a skill that can be learned, just like almost anything else in the world. It might not be, sort of the direction you've headed with your life, or you might not think you have strength in that area. But like, if you can write your name, you can draw. Like, you have the physical dexterity. The rest of it's just a mental game, and you can actually turn that on and off.
Yes, and if you happen to be watching or listening, Mom, whether live or recorded, I think we talked about, at least, and I don't know if we ended up buying it, a how to draw, how to sketch course. We should take it together. Let's do it, because I know you said you wanted to start doodling some more, and so let's doodle together. Is that weird to say? With your mom?
With your mom, maybe I should
doodle with your mom?
duty a little. No, there's a great book for those of y'all listening that is called "How to Draw from the Right Side of the Brain," and it has these techniques in there to basically short circuit your brain from you thinking you can't draw, because it's sort of it makes things kind of complicated in a way. This is funny because usually we're drawing the symbol of the thing. If you say draw a picture of somebody's face, people tend to draw a smiley face or something like this. This is a symbol for the thing, and they're not. And the problem is you're not actually observing what's going on. You're drawing out of your head rather than drawing out of reality. And this book can kind of help you break all those with a couple of nice little techniques.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, actually, I just got this fancy iPad tablet, which one of the purposes is for us to incorporate it into our streams, which today when we're talking about flying buttresses and gravity distribution, I was like, all right, we'll have that cable that will allow me to plug my one really expensive Apple device into my other really expensive Apple device that I've had 2 feet from each other now for about a week, but I just haven't had the right cable to connect, which is very frustrating. Anyways, I started sketching, which is the first time that I've started sketching, and I've really liked it. And I think it's pretty cool because I also have had that kind of limitation where, like, I don't think I'm that good, but I also have not put very much time into it. And I watched this one, like, 5-minute video online about sketching. And it's like, well, look here, if you divide it this way, and you take that and you just draw that one little thing, and you see, oh, this goes, you draw a little rectangle, and you use these guidelines and things like that. Like, it's like, I just drew a banana or whatever, and you have this picture, and or even just starting, let me just trace over it, and then let me just take that motion over here where I'm no longer tracing. It's like, wow, you can actually have these little tricks to where you can get stuff that looks pretty good. And I mean, I was doing it really quickly, and I was like, if I can do it, anyone can do it, because come on. But I also want to point out, there is a person named Ryan in the chat who I'm not going to say because we've got this gender ambiguous name. And they also are requesting some love letters with doodles. So I will commit to sending love letters to doodles to this person named Ryan, who I obviously know, but I won't let the rest of the people know that. All right, let's jump back real quick to our music for about 30 seconds and why don't you give us a little bit of a mindfulness prompt before we hop into our next topic?
Ooh, one of the best, easiest mindfulness prompts to sort of get you to reconnect in the present moment is to remember a time when you were in nature. Remember a time when you could feel the breeze on your skin. When you look around, maybe you can hear leaves rustling. Maybe you can visualize the sunset. When you start thinking about these kind of things and you can really focus on that moment, and you sit down and you take breaths and you visualize this mentally, you can feel yourself start to move into the state of mind in which you recognize the present moment there, and you can bring that into the current moment. So spend a little bit of time today just sort of tapping in to the present moment by remembering this past and then opening back up to your present.
All right, so we're going to give you guys 30 seconds to do that right now, give or take, so you can start. And then, of course, if you're driving or something like that, be safe. If you need to pull over or do this at another time, that's fine. And also, I would encourage you guys to do this for more than 30 seconds later today, especially if you find yourself in some sort of heightened sense of either negativity or whatnot, or you're stressed out or whatever, or you just feel like you need to recenter. So we'll jump over to that music for a quick second so you guys a test. Taste.
And we're back. Okay, take that last deep breath and exhale. Pop. The black lung.
All right, so for some of you guys who thought that was I don't know, silly or weird or whatever, hey, guess what? It's your first time you're doing it. Just like anything else, this is a skill that you can train and you do more often and can help you. Whether or not you realize.
Yeah, connecting to the present moment it's something that we very seldom can do, is stop our rational brain from talking.
Yeah.
So speaking of stopping
talking, here we go. So for this last little bit, we're gonna do something a little fun here, which neither Ryder or I know what's gonna be until right now when I say something.
Oh boy.
Da, 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 da. All right, Ryder, tell me your first present that you remember when you're less than 10 years old. A gift.
BB gun.
A BB gun. Gun control. Great topic. Let's talk about gun control.
Who gives a 9-year-old a BB gun?
You shoot your eye out.
Yeah, and I think I almost did.
Oh, you did. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, this reminds me of his story when my grandfather was growing up, and he and his brothers, when I was growing up, we played paintball, we played airsoft, where you're shooting at each other with plastic bullets or little balls of paint. Well, he and his brothers, they played, let's shoot the apple off of each other's head kind of games.
Oh man.
And I'm not sure if they were BB guns, pellet guns, or whatever, but still a lot more risky than I would like to do.
Yeah. My dad has a great story where they were messing with their sister, as 3 boys and my aunt, and they were basically throwing darts as close to her foot as they could.
And she was in on this.
No, she was trying to ignore them. She just like, whatever, you're not going to get to me. You're not going to get to me. And then they just, whoop, right through her foot. It's just like the games people used to play.
I mean, well, probably less popular now.
Yeah,
but
yeah. I don't know. I think we live in a less violent time. I don't know why I would say that. Maybe I've just finished Angels of Our Better Natures or something. But
I would say yeah. I mean, and also bullying now, it used to be cool. Now it's not, and it's been cracked down on so much. And obviously, I have no idea what the reality of that is. But I would say on
now
average,
the teachers are the bullies who crack down on bullies.
Yeah.
So everyone's always got a bully in their life.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see here. What is the very ridiculous? When I say ridiculous story, what pops into your head, or something extremely crazy or silly or funny? Anything? Any of that prompt you at all?
No, I'm still stuck on BB guns.
BB guns. Okay.
I had a Red Ryder BB gun, of course.
Perfect.
Because I had to. Yeah, with the little compass in the stock and everything else. And I actually broke it trying to hit a grasshopper.
like
Yes, I was using
you're
it
trying
the
to
wrong way. I was using it as a club, and I was trying to hit this grasshopper. Just broke the stalk off, and then of course I was such a sensitive little kid that I started crying. Oh, but I was about to kill an insect, and then yet I'm crying because I broke my toy.
that was like the perfect picture or metaphor of your manliness and your feminine side. Oh, that's pretty good. That's
Yeah,
pretty
thanks.
good.
Yeah.
I like that. No, I think some of the best stories are the ones where we get to laugh at ourselves. And, it's funny how that works. So at least for me, when someone pops up to me and says, hey, tell me like an embarrassing story about yourself or something embarrassing you did. And then, of course, I'm sure there are some things in my life, and maybe it's just the way it's asked. But right when that's asked, it's like, I don't know. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, it's that whole like, be funny right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now. It's
Yeah.
kind of like saying, pee right now.
Well, here, I'll tell
No
this story.
pressure.
I'll tell this one story that I think of that some people would deem as embarrassing, career ending, things like that.
Whoa.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that bad. But I was in this class, and I went to Texas A&M, which is known as being one of the more conservative schools.
By the way,
in the
did I
country.
tell you that's where I started with architecture? So
Really?
I also spent a little bit of time at old Texas A&M.
You and I both thinking about buttresses together.
Yes, but
Yeah, actually, Danielle took an architecture class, and that's where I learned about buttresses through her, because it was her and her friend took that class together, and they taught me about buttresses.
I don't even know
ones, the flying ones.
No
It was
wonder
great.
you nearly got this. Could nearly be career ending.
But yeah, so I was taking this class, which is actually a really cool class. The main reason a lot of people took it was because it satisfied multiple requirements. It was like, this is an art requirement. Yeah. This is a history requirement. It wasn't a history requirement, but whatever it was, as you're going through school, at least here in America, you have certain boxes you have to check. You need 90 hours in this certain thing.
Humanities
you need to,
and math.
You need to
and
have
science
everyone who goes to college needs to check these 5 boxes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one was called ENS 101. Environmental Design 101.
Ah, yes, I have taken this class.
Nice.
Yeah.
At a different university.
No, at Texas A&M.
Oh, at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and it's also Texas A&M is one of the only schools I went to that has a 101 kind of convention. The others are all in the thousands.
They're elevated.
Yeah.
Next level.
Yeah. Texas A&M.
Not so much. Not so much. But yeah, so this Environmental Design 101 class is pretty interesting, and it's actually, if you take out the electrical engineering classes that I took, this is the only class I took on design, which I think is kind of a shame, honestly, because I think design is present in all of these different ways, whether people realize it or not, whether it's just designing your life, or, for example, when I'm doing all this engineering work, we are designing a thing, but yet I never had any classes on the overall concepts of design and things like that and the process of design. But anyway, so this class was interesting, and to be honest, I might struggle remembering the exact curriculum from it, but I'll just talk about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I took it in the 50s, so I bet the curriculum
it
has
changed a little bit. Yeah. I didn't have to go to the library. I didn't have to talk to people.
How did you survive?
I didn't have to open books.
No.
But yeah, and at least when I went through it, it was, it was a large style class. So you're in an auditorium with 200 people or something like that, and one of the things near the end is this project, and we had some sort of invention that we came up with, and then we had to essentially give some sort of marketing pitch for it, right? And so this was in probably 2011, 12 type time frame, and we had the genius idea of whenever you go to pay for something, you will use your handprint, and it was like, even back then, it wasn't like that unique of an idea. It definitely wasn't being done, right? But now, of course, there's ways you pay with your thumbprint, with your face print, Apple ID, Samsung Pay, all those type of things. But back then, it was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of a decent idea, but probably not that unique. So anyways, we did that, and it was like, oh, well, one of the benefits of doing this. So we're up in front of the class, in front of this auditorium of like 200 people. I think it was also maybe even being filmed. And it's like, oh, one of the benefits of doing this payment system is you don't have to carry around a wallet. And so we're at Texas A&M, one of the most conservative schools, arguably, in the country, which I both agree with that and disagree with that. I didn't find it to feel that conservative, although there were, you do see people throwing eggs at pictures of Obama. There's also LGBTQ things and very diverse, lots of international people. plenty of white people as well, of course, and plenty of Texans.
Well, and it just, it's things like the affiliation with past presidents is
Yes.
also this diehard Republican land, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So
military.
pretty conservative. Yeah, military is very, very prominent in that culture. And so it's like, one of the benefits of using this payment system is you don't have to carry around a wallet. And I made the joke live on stage because we've talked about in the past. I enjoy improv. I enjoy taking those risks. I don't care about, falling flat on our face. Of course, we make fools of ourselves here, right? And I said, man, this is going to be, I'm going to botch the joke, right? It was much funnier, of course, when I did it then, naturally.
Sure, Reed.
But I was like, it's much more comfortable. This is one of those things, right? You don't have to worry about having that wallet in your back pocket and causing a bunch of pain, having a bunch of pain in your butt, something like that. And I said something along the lines of, gay guys are used to having that kind of pain. And I said that something along those lines live in this class as part of an assignment. And it was great. It was the shock value alone. The crowd erupted in laughter. And of course, you could see in the crowd there was that mix. And also on my team, because they had no idea this was coming up. I came up on the spot. About 2 seconds of filter, like, am I going to do that? Yes, I'm going to do that. And then it went, and then it's just like a mix of mouths wide open, and then people were laughing, and then people after the class were like, oh, dude, I can't believe you did that. Nice job. And like all these people like, yeah, nice. And then, of course, the next class, this is reference back to our cancel culture discussion we had a few days ago. I had emails like, hey, you're going to have to apologize to the class. And I was like, first off, it was that one of those things where like I'm not gonna like put up that big of a rub. I'm not gonna fight it that much because it's not that big of a deal. Like it's not worth it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like I didn't actually say anything offensive. Like I referenced, and again, I didn't give the exact joke as I gave it then, but the joke I was making was referencing the fact that gay men have sex that's often anal sex. That was it. I didn't say it was good, it was bad, or otherwise. I just made a reference to it. But yet some people got so offended, and I had to get up and make some apology. And I was like, all right, okay. But yeah, there's my embarrassing story.
Yeah, talking about being like kind of on stage. I was part of a lecture series. Me and two of my friends curated an exhibit at the Dallas Museum of Art a few years back, and I don't know. That was around the same time you were at Texas A&M.
Nice.
And so we ended up during the show, and then we had a lecture that we were giving. So we're up on stage, and the museum director's talking to us, or the curator for contemporary art is talking to us. And he's sort of saying like, he's asking my friends these questions. And I haven't really said anything yet because I'm just sort of waiting to see how my friends want to describe the show and what's happening with it. And it's all very low and subdued and thoughtful and slow. And midway through, you start hearing this person snoring in the audience. And they're just really going at it. Because you're kind of snoring when your head lays back. And you're just like, and they're snoring. And the curator looks over to me and goes, Ryder, you haven't said much, but don't you think everything you're doing is quite exciting? And I just said, I was like, well, I don't think everyone thinks so.
Did you say that?
Yeah. Nice. I said that. And then, of course, everyone in the audience, I guess they were just looking for, like, everyone was having to both acknowledge the sleeper and then pretend to be super interested. And I found that little disparity to be really funny, and just sort of like naming it made everyone laugh because it sort of released that tension.
Right.
Yeah, and so it was kind of fun, and then I got to go off on my rambling whatevers about how I was thinking about the show. But yeah, it was kind of, when you get in front of an audience like that, and there can just be so much tension.
Right.
And I think just weird things come out of people's mouths at those points.
And that's one of the reasons why I love improv, and also the idea of having the crowd around, and there is you need a significant enough number to get to the point where at least one person will react, because everyone has their different views. And so the larger the group, the better. And then it's also like, guess what? Some people who were probably initially shocked, but then everyone else was laughing, they probably then started laughing too. And so that is just like, And I also really hope if any of you are listening to this and you happen to be in that class, whatever time of day or night this is for you, please let me know, because I would be curious to hear some other people's stories from this. I mean, it was a 200, 300 person class, so that would be an interesting taking in ENS 101 at Texas A&M sometime between probably 2010, 2011. I mean, not that you need to know. You probably remember if you're in this class. Not every day somebody makes a gay sex joke on class.
You know what's so funny is I know I've probably been around something, some sort of jokes that were made that were inappropriate or something. But for the life of me now, because it wasn't about me,
right?
I don't remember anything.
No, but it is also worth pointing out that, I think the more open to that you are and the more ready you are to laugh at that, the less it'll probably stick out in your mind. Versus if you are, can you believe the guy who did that?
Yeah, they do have sayings about how negative memories tend to stick with us longer.
Nice.
And so, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
So that's why we have to work so hard to keep everything cheerful, right? To make sure that we're having happy memories and that we're creating those as well.
Yes. Well, we are getting close to our time today, and by close to, we mean a couple minutes past, but we're never on time, so here we are.
Wow.
So today we talked about a variety of things. We talked a little bit about recapping yesterday, about how we talked about life is kind of like building a house. And yesterday, by the way, our challenge was along the lines of, hey, take a few minutes to plan out your day for the rest of the day or for tomorrow. And so we're hoping that some of you guys did that. And for today, we talked a little bit about we talked about Ryder's first love and how he had some love letters with doodles, which led to our challenge for today, which is write a love letter or a thank you letter or a gratitude letter or some sort of something. And I'm going to challenge you guys, if you're up for it, actually use pencil and paper if you even happen to have it in your house. Or, of course, digital is fine as well. But, think of someone in your life who maybe you haven't told, like, oh, I really appreciate the things you do. I really am glad that you're in my life. Or even just something kind of silly, like, oh, hey, I think it's funny that we can talk about diarrhea together. Whatever it may be, some sort of thank you. And also, that can be to somebody else. To yourself, rather. So maybe you need a little bit of gratitude yourself and say, hey, acknowledging thanks for doing X, Y, Z. I think those are good things. You're on the right path. So that is our challenge for today. And just to talk about one or two of the other things we talked about diarrhea. We talked about flying buttresses. We talked about making gay jokes at a conservative school on stage. Anything else that we talked about?
No. I haven't mentioned with the flying butts is Monty Python. So if you ever need to see some flying butts, watch some Monty Python.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? One last little fun thing for you guys. It's the weekend. Go laugh. Go do something that's going to make you laugh. Find a friend or go watch a show, go to a movie, watch a comedy special, anything. Just do something to make yourself laugh, especially if you haven't laughed in a while, because there is nothing to break the tension of every day, the tension of all your stress. You just can't. It is a drug. Laughter is a drug. It releases a whole bunch of chemicals in your body, and the good ones, not those chemtrails, Yeah, and yes, the last thing that I want to make sure we reference is the most important thing we talked about, which is clubbing grasshoppers. Thank you, Ryan, for bringing that back up.
Oh, right. I shouldn't have told that story.
If you have a tool, maybe it's a BB gun, and try using it a little differently.
Yeah.
Like clubbing a grasshopper.
That's not how you're supposed to use it.
And if you can't find yourself laughing, just think about me and Ryder, and think of Ryder's face close up. Think about how he clubs grasshoppers, how he enjoys flying buttresses, and talking about diarrhea.
Oh, man.
And with that... and also our cameraman with his pants below his knees. Keep those knees protected, y'all.
Protect them.
Have a wonderful Friday.